I'm not afraid.
You will be. You will be.
Hey everybody, hopefully you've had a chance to see the movie or you're getting ready to see it really soon. This is going to address some of the biggest questions after the movie, because that quote from Luke where he says this isn't going to go the way you think it's going to go was never more true. Literally, that is the biggest takeaway from this movie, is that almost nobody predicted all the big twists. Just because of the sheer size of the fandom, yeah, there were a lot of correct guesses before it came out, but the movie itself is just like one double take to another with all these big twists. So I will say definitely, spoiler warning, if you haven't seen the movie yet, we'll be talking about very specific plot points and what happens to a lot of the characters. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get everything. There's a whole bunch more Star Wars that we have to talk about this weekend, and I'll keep doing the IMAX ticket giveaway for a while, so no worries about that. So starting with number 10, what is the implied future of Episode 9 in the fate of the galaxy? Like, where do they leave things at the end of this movie, and where do they have to pick up when we get to the next one? Most likely scenario is that because of the hyperspace tracking twist, the Resistance will make it to the Outer Rim, they'll replenish some of their supplies, but there's this whole idea about the spark of rebellion. So the main takeaway is that their force alone, even when they replenish their supplies in the Outer Rim, won't be enough to fight the First Order. They're going to have to make some key moves that will cause systems in the galaxy to back them. Then they can turn it into a real fight. You now have the promise of the new rebellion, which is also what that little kid with the rebellion insignia was all about. He seemed really mysterious, like he might turn into a big character, but that's just meant to show you the spark of rebellion in the galaxy. Like, people randomly all over the place are starting to join the cause. It's this grassroots thing that'll hopefully catch fire and burn down the First Order, like Poe talks about during the trailers. One of the more divisive plot points in the film, number 9, why did Luke try to kill Ben when he was just a kid? So the logic here is that he saw this rising darkness that he felt like he couldn't combat. And one of the big themes of the film is the idea of bad parents that don't want their children in various forms or another. Like, Luke Skywalker is kind of a parent to Kylo Ren in this situation. He doesn't want this darkness, so he tries to get rid of him. That also thematically ties in with what goes on with Rey's parents, which we'll talk about in a second. You could also subtitle it Awful Parents. So I think a lot of people will disagree with the direction they took those characters because they want to believe that, Leia and Han, they'd be amazing parents. But turns out, in this saga, they weren't so hot, neither was Luke Skywalker. But obviously the next big follow-up to that, number 8, who are Rey's parents and how is that important to the story, the revelation of who they are? Like, what does that mean for the narrative? So we learned that they were actually nobodies that sold her off for money. They're literally like a bunch of junkies that were looking for another fix. They wanted some drinks, and because of all the mind-reading twists, Kylo Ren is able to pick it out of Rey's mind. They died in a grave in the desert somewhere, and Rey has always known this on a certain level, but hasn't really confronted it, so Kylo Ren forces her to think about it again. But again, why is it so significant to the story that her parents be nobodies? The idea gets back to that Kylo Ren twist, parents that don't want their children. In number 2, the second big reason, the idea that anybody in the galaxy can be special. So that, I think, also syncs up with the idea of that little kid with the rebellion insignia. The whole idea, the spark of rebellion, it needs to be everybody that burns down the First Order. It can't just be a group of really special people. So as a franchise, from a narrative standpoint, previously what we've seen is that the characters are special because they're related to each other in some way. Like, you pass the Force down through your bloodline. Luke Skywalker in the film talks about how he was so amazed with Kylo Ren's mighty Skywalker blood, as he calls it. So when they say that Rey's parents were just a couple of nobodies, they're saying that anybody can be special like Rey and be just as powerful as Kylo Ren, who descends from the line of Anakin Skywalker. Luke Skywalker has this really important quote about how the Force doesn't belong to the Jedi. Luke has come to the realization that people over-romanticize the idea of the relationship the Jedi had with the Force. They were just people who trained their abilities, but there are many, many different Force-sensitive people in the galaxy who aren't Jedi. The idea of the Wills, the Church of the Force, like you have people that can wield the Force but are not Jedi. It also gets into some Leia twists during the movie too. Like she isn't a Jedi, but she does use the Force. So that's why it's important for the story that Rey's parents are nobodies. I think people were just disappointed because they were like, wait a minute, they were nobody special? But you just have to remember why that's important for a narrative perspective. And, if she's able to redeem Kylo Ren at the end of the franchise, then maybe we'll still have some Skywalkers to talk about in another 10 years, but we'll see. So number 7, another big thing that has people upset. Who is Snoke really? The film itself doesn't tell you any of that. You get a sense for some of the scope of his power. He has some new abilities like linking Kylo Ren and Rey telepathically across the galaxy, which is pretty cool. But the film doesn't tell you where he's from specifically, what his origin story was, and what's going to happen to him next, given the big twist at the end of the film. There are a lot of people that theorize that he might be the first Jedi because of some of the etchings at the Jedi Temple where Luke Skywalker is staying. There's a symbol on the ground that has a figure on it, a very yin-yang looking picture that looks a lot like Snoke's character, but we know that he comes from the unknown regions, so it's possible, if that's true, if he is one of the first Jedi, that he just left the Order and went out to the unknown regions and lay in wait, building his power and his resources until he could find the right time to snuff out the Jedi Order, because that's his whole thing during the movie. He wants to eliminate the spark of the Jedi. But I think the whole idea is that just because he seems like he gets killed doesn't mean that's the last we'll see of him, because if he's just as powerful as Luke Skywalker, then it's always possible that he'll come back to Kylo Ren the same way that Luke is implied will come back to Kylo Ren. But another big hanging plot thread, number 6, what are they going to do with the Leia character in Episode 9, given what's happened in real life in the way they end the film with her, like her big final scene? Or are they just going to assume her final fate at the end of Episode 9? And will she also be able to become a Force ghost, even though she didn't train to do so, like Luke Skywalker, Yoda, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Anakin Skywalker? Or she could be a voice in Kylo Ren's head, the way they say that he still has Han Solo's heart. It's more of a metaphor, but they could do it in a more literal context with Leia because she's Force sensitive. So getting into number 5, how powerful was Luke Skywalker before his final ascension? So the whole idea is that he's just been lying in wait, reading these Jedi texts. They make a lot of jokes about the books themselves. Not really big page turners. They also make the joke that the books themselves aren't that necessary. She also carries a lot of the things within her that are in these books. So what are the books good for? Are they good for nothing? They're just highly sought after collectibles. But if Luke wasn't training this whole time and he's able to project his Force spirit across the galaxy, he has got to be crazy powerful, but not so powerful that it can save his life. But the whole idea being that you strike me down, I'll become more powerful than ever. There's still a lot of argument in the fandom about what Force ghosts are able to do and how powerful you get. The Clone Wars touched on that a little bit, so rewatch those Yoda episodes if you want to learn more about that. But number 4, what's the future of the Luke Skywalker character? This is also one of the most divisive things about the film. Like, how could you do this to the Luke Skywalker character? Well, the whole idea at the end of the film, see you around kid, is that he will be back, but he'll be back as a Force ghost just harassing Kylo Ren, trying to bring him back to the light side. In the way that Ben kept reappearing to Luke while he was on Dagobah. Like he would just show up, have a conversation with Luke, then go away. So, because Rey is probably going to continue training as a Jedi, Luke will be able to reappear to her to give her guidance when necessary. But number 3, why did he not leave Ahch 2? So this, I think, was partly thematically because of the way they synced up with some plot points during Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Like Luke went to confront Vader to try and bring him back to the light side, the same way that Rey is determined to bring Kylo Ren back to the light side. Yoda didn't go with Luke. He's one of the most powerful Force users in the galaxy, but he stays in his hut on Dagobah because it was important for Luke to go through this trial on his path to becoming a Jedi. So I think that's also one of the reasons why Luke stayed on Ahch 2. But to be fair, he did leave Ahch 2, just not in the way people expected. Like his quote in the trailer, this isn't going to go the way you think it's going to go. So number 2, what's going to happen to Kylo Ren given the state of his relationship with Rey and how they ended things? You are not alone, neither are you. Then they grab each other's hands, they touch each other. So it's almost like they have this special connection, and then it becomes a literal connection because of what Snoke does with his Force powers. That will probably continue in episode 9. Rey will still be determined to bring him back to the light side, but given the fact that they already did the Return of the Jedi twist where you kill the Emperor and they didn't do the redemptive moment, it'll be interesting to see whether or not they actually do make it to a Kylo Ren redemption. But then number 1, WTF, what's going to happen to the future of the Jedi Order? Luke is supposed to be the last Jedi, and technically he is when he dies because Rey hasn't become a Jedi, and neither is Kylo Ren. So what will have to happen is that Rey goes back to Ahch-To to get Luke Skywalker's lightsaber because she doesn't have one right now. And either she uses that or she constructs a new lightsaber and she starts to explore what the Force is and develops a new version of the Jedi Order. But I think that's part of the idea, is that she and Kylo Ren could eventually give birth to a new Jedi Order with a different belief system than what you saw before. So you see this franchise in general, these Star Wars films, sloughing off a lot of the old baggage that came with them so that they can do new things in the future. So I think a lot of people are upset about some of those twists, but I think that's what they're all in service of, is in getting to the new stuff so they're not always shackled to the old characters for the rest of time. So like in 100 years when we're still getting Star Wars films, we're not going back to Luke Skywalker every single movie. But just let me know in the comments, what are your biggest questions after the film, and what did you think about some of the big twists? Some people really hate it, some people really like it, but I think it opens up some interesting opportunities for the future of the saga after episode 9, like 10, 11, 12, whatever that ends up being. But what'll happen is I'll do Easter eggs and more videos across the weekend, so just leave all your requests in the comments below. There is a new round of that IMAX ticket giveaway. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber, leave a Star Wars related comment on the video. Congratulations to the winner from my last video, Austin Flowers. Please private message me so I can get your contact details. While you wait for everything, click here for my non-spoilery review, and click here to learn all about Disney buying Fox and Marvel getting access to all the X-Men characters again. They actually did the thing. So thank you so much for watching. Everybody stay awesome. I'll see you guys tonight.